Hey guys, it's Jesse, and today we are going to be talking about the highly anticipated GAN 562. So it's been like 9 months now since Worlds, and we've seen people like Tymon, Felix, Nahm using this cube, getting incredible times with it, so I've just been really excited for it. So let's go ahead and check it out. So this is the box for the cube. Very classic GAN design. I really like all just the circular stuff going on. It's very clean, just looks good. This just slides off. So we get a very nice GAN card. It's embossed. So it just comes with a pamphlet and a bag, same kind of circular design elements going on, and a little screwdriver. This is the cube. You just push here on the GAN logo, and it pops open. And just look how nice this cube looks. Just visually, it's just a very distinctive, cool looking cube. So there are two versions of this 5x5. There's a matte finish version for $58.99, and then the UV coated one is gonna be $67.99. And we don't actually have the UV version yet. I think that's gonna be coming in a few more weeks. So GAN actually just sent us two matte cubes, which is okay, but I really don't like matte finish. So I have a 5x5 that I've already broken in. I think I've done about 400 solves or so on the cube by now. It still just feels like matte plastic. Like, it's definitely more worn down, but I'm really waiting on that UV one because I personally much prefer UV. There's really nothing adjustable on this cube. It does have core magnets, so it's not a ball core, but it does have corner to core magnets in there. But yeah, nothing else. It's, as you can see, it's got like visibly exposed magnets, but none of the magnets are adjustable. If you take a center cap out, you can see that it is literally just a screw and spring, which I actually think is really good. I think trying to incorporate a bunch of adjustments into a 5x5 would have probably made it heavier and just more cumbersome. If you have adjustable magnets, you have the potential for the magnets to fall out. You have to build in all these contraptions into the pieces. It just makes it too complicated. Like, all you want in a 5x5 is really good piece design. That's what's most important, and that's what this cube has. So I'll show you what the out of the box turning is like. Kind of just bad turning on my part, but yeah, so basically out of the box, the cube is really nothing special. It doesn't feel bad. Like, you know, it's pretty fast. It's, you know, of course, very stable. But yeah, just the actual turning feel, it was just not what I remembered. I mean, obviously I remember using Tymon's really well broken in cube, but I was just kind of surprised at like how much I really wasn't a fan of the cube when I first turned it, but the cube does get a lot better. We'll talk more about that. But out of the box, it feels really grindy to me. So it just feels like there is a ton of contact on the inside and every piece is just rubbing and grinding over each other. It really actually reminded me more of like a GAN Smart Cube, like that kind of plastic feel and just that kind of grindiness. Another kind of interesting quirk that this cube has, I'm not sure how well you'll be able to really notice this, but like, look at this green cap right here on the centerpiece. It's slightly raised. You can see a little bit of a gap. So basically all you have to do is just push down pretty hard. Did you hear that little click, that little snap? Now, as you can see, it's locked in and there is no gap now. So basically all of the caps on this cube come just a little bit loose. And when you push them all the way in, you'll hear that little click, that little snap. Once it locks in like that, it doesn't move. Like, I haven't had any problems with caps popping off, which has been a problem on a lot of 5x5s for me. So that's really nice. It is a little bit annoying that when you get the cube, it can be kind of lumpy and uneven. Like, the sides won't really feel flat, but they really stay in place once you go through and do that. So that's just been the out of the box experience. Now let's move on to this cube, which is the one I've actually been solving on and breaking in. And all I did to set this up was I loosened the cube a little bit, so it comes pretty tight. So I just loosened it by a quarter turn, and then I just added a little bit of lube, like a little bit of FC Rush. That is actually it. And then just a bunch of solves. I've found that the cube, while it is fast, it's not super fast, and I want the cube to basically be as fast as it can be, so I basically just keep the cube dry. I've tried adding more lube, and it really didn't work, so I had to wipe it out and just stick with a really dry but very light lube setup, and that actually works really well. Yeah, the cube just turns really good. Like, it definitely feels a lot less grindy. It's kind of shifted from being grindy, like the pieces rubbing against each other, to being more of like a crispy feeling. It still feels very papery, very light. And the inner layers on this cube, oh man, the inner layers in particular are the best I've ever tried on any 5x5. They are so fast. I very rarely have problems where like the layers kind of separate. Edge pairing is like an absolute joy. Like, you know, doing these real quick slices, you know, insert, slice, like it just feels really nice to do. As for the outer layers on this cube, they are really good. I think they are almost as good as the inners, but I think the outers are actually a little worse. They are a little bit slower and a little bit more grindy, a little bit more crunchy. The inners are actually really smooth. So I think it might be due to the core magnets, like the extra magnetic force in there might be slowing down the layer a little bit and adding in an extra bump in there, which makes the inners feel smoother compared to the outers. That is definitely possible. The main thing about it that I really like is just how stable it is. So on every other 5x5 I've ever used, I've kind of just accepted that it's inevitable. At some point, you're gonna get one of those big 5x5 lockups that causes either a pop or just, you know, where you have to stop and actually kind of force it all back together. That doesn't happen on this cube. Like, it's actually amazing. It's never happened. At least, caveat, at least, with the correct tensions. So when I was messing with the tensions, I did go a little bit looser and then ended up going back. When it was looser, yes, I did get some 5x5 catches like that, but they were easy to fix. No pieces actually came out of the cube. It didn't actually ever pop. It just jammed and you had to kind of get it back in there. And then once I got it to a correct tension, I just tightened it back up a little bit. It was fine. Like it never happens. The cube has never popped, never corner twisted. That's another thing. Corner twists have happened on the Hong and on the Diane 5x5, the MGC. Never has happened on this, not even close. And yeah, it just keeps its shape so well. It just feels like such a reliable cube. And it also doesn't feel snappy. So this is another thing about the Hong, another characteristic of it. It has a tendency to like really bind in a way that like makes it almost feel like the cube is gonna like break or something if you try and push through it. It feels kind of bad. That does not happen on this cube. It just stays together. And the corner cutting is really good. Like it's really easy to get these straightforward cuts in, but what I like about it is the reverse cutting. So this is much more forgiving. It's much easier to get through the cut. Like you don't feel it as much and it doesn't deform the cube as much at all. So as a result, you get a cube that is simultaneously has forgiving corner cutting and non-snappy turning, and it's really stable without like feeling too blocky or too restrictive. That's a really fine line to walk between the cube being like too kind of rigid and then too flexible. It's really hard to get it in that sweet spot. And I think this is really like right in that sweet spot. Like it's so good. I do want to take a look at the pieces, just show you guys some of the pieces. It's really hard to take pieces out. So I took two corner sections out and yeah, you can just see like these pieces are locked in. They are not moving. To get them out, I got to turn it 45, kind of pull this edge out like a 3x3 piece. All right, so finally got a piece out and now we can finally get to these corners, which also, as you can see, are locked into that ball core still. I have completely disassembled this cube before, and it's not actually that bad to reassemble. You basically just have to create that 3x3 shell first, and then you just kind of slot in all of the wing edges and the other centers. So yeah, this is a great little look at the internal design here. You can see those core magnets in there, and you can see there's actually a good amount of space here between like the middle center and the kind of edge centers here. So here is the big edge. So you can see that torpedo in there, keeping it locked in. Honeycomb pattern on the corners. We got the same pattern. Got our core magnet in there. Here is a wing edge, very blocky design, a really kind of fat base here, and no honeycomb on this one. We got an outer corner here. This bit at the bottom is actually hollow, but is just very wide, so takes up a lot of space. And then I guess the last type of piece here is just these, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So yeah, all right, so now that we've taken a look at the mechanism, I want to talk more about how this cube compares to other good 5x5s that are out on the market and just talk about some recommendations. So let's take a look at some solves. So yeah, I've just been absolutely loving this cube. It is so fun to solve on, and my times have been really, really good. I've been averaging around 110 or so on 5x5 lately. I think with this cube though, you really just gotta give it time. I think you need to give yourself some time for the cube to break in and for yourself to get used to the cube, because coming from the Hong, this cube is just very, very different. So let's talk more about how the two cubes compare. So the Hong has better outers with worse inners, and it's kind of the opposite on the GAN. The GAN has really good inners, the outers not quite as good. I think they're more equal on the GAN, like the inners and outers are almost exactly the same, whereas on the Hong, the outers are like significantly faster and better than the inners. So you feel it's more of a difference like going between layers on this cube, whereas the GAN feels more consistent. The Hong is also considerably more locky than the GAN. Like the GAN, like I said, it keeps its shape extremely well and it very rarely locks up, and it pretty much never has gotten those big 5x5 lockups that usually involves a pop. That still happens sometimes on the Hong, and just general lockups throughout the solve are pretty common on the Hong. You know, the cube is still very resilient and is really stable, so you can kind of bounce back from those lockups pretty easily, but you know, the lockups are still happening, whereas they pretty much do not happen at all on the GAN. And in terms of feel, the Hong is much more of like a bubbly, softer feeling. Like it's definitely smoother, and I think it actually kind of retains lube a little bit better. Like you can feel the lube in the cube. The GAN 5x5 has a lot more of a dry feeling. Obviously, I don't have much lube in there, but even when there was lube, it still felt dry, and it just has a really crispy, sandy feeling, whereas the Hong feels more soft, basically. So the question is, like, if you have a Hong, do you upgrade to the GAN, right? And the thing is, I don't really see this cube as being like an upgrade to the Hong, more as just like a different cube. I think a more direct upgrade would be if you're coming from a Volk. So I think a lot of people are still on the Volk. It's still really popular competitively. And I think the people who really like how stable the Volk is probably didn't want to risk going to the Hong, which is more unstable. But I think like going from the Volk to the GAN just makes so much more sense than going from the Volk to the Hong or a different 5x5. And just a couple other things to kind of think about. The Hong only has UV coating, so if you want a matte cube, you know, you just can't get that with the Hong. The Hong is also a little bit smaller, so if you like more compact cubes, this is gonna be the way to go. I still think I prefer the size of the Hong. I think I actually would like the GAN just a little more if it was a couple millimeters smaller. And the other thing too is that I think generally speaking, the Hong is gonna be better out of the box. With the GAN though, I think like the ceiling of the cube is higher than the Hong. Let's put it that way. Like I think the Hong, maybe it starts out better, but the GAN is gonna win in the long term when you actually set it up and break it in properly. And then maybe we should talk about some other 5x5s too. There's the MGC 5x5, still a really good budget option. And if you really like how that feels, I would still say go for the Hong. It feels a lot more like the MGC. Then there's the Ouchwang, and I haven't actually used an Ouchwang in forever. If you have an Ouchwang, I would get one of these two. Like I think basically the Hong and the GAN, these are the best 5x5s out there right now. Of course, there is a price difference between these two cubes. The Hong is a bit cheaper, but I don't think the GAN 5 is really overpriced, honestly. Like it's cheaper than their flagship 3x3. I don't really think it's that bad of a deal for like one of the best cubes I've ever tried. Like it's really good. So I think GAN actually was very reasonable with its pricing with this cube. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the GAN 5x5. Really, really great cube. I think it's pretty much the best 5x5 on the market. If you want to check it out, the link will of course be in the description. I think the matte version is just about off pre-order, and the UV one will be coming in a few weeks, so it's a little bit delayed, but we will be getting those soon. So yeah, link in the description, check it out. That's all for this one. See ya.